That's another thing that they don't tell you about Egypt, is that it really can be a death portal. You go there to remember this version of heaven on earth. You go there and you get to see the magnificence and the majesty and the connection with the divine. I have never pulled more light through my nervous system than I did in these 10 days.
Sweet friends, it's Emily, and this is Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? So today's episode is not for the faint of heart. These are all the stories that did not make it into the original cut because they were too intense, too hot. The behind the scenes from the Egypt pilgrimage.
These temples are like time capsules, and they're proof that we as a species have accessed higher realms of consciousness. And so I think that the blueprint for creating heaven on earth is...
Now that you're home, what from Egypt is still moving through you?
So thankfully, the thing that's not moving through me from Egypt is intestinal issues. Somehow I missed the memo that when you go to Egypt, everyone gets diarrhea and vomits. But it was like 40 people doing a 10-day ayahuasca journey, and it was wild. But thankfully, people are now out of those intestinal woods. And as annoying as that is, and as much as nobody wants to go on a 10-day pilgrimage and shit their pants the whole time, it actually was like a very necessary clearing. Like we had to make space for the bigness of the downloads that came through in those temples. Just like you don't get to dance with God in ayahuasca without puking out your lies and your resistance and your old stagnant energy in your body. The same is true of Egypt. And what's happening now is that I feel like anything that is not a vibrational match for where I am going, anything that is not in alignment with the next evolution of me and of Ziva is falling away. And that's another thing they don't tell you about Egypt, is that it really can be a death portal. It's like anything that is not in service of the next timeline of where you're going falls away. And there can be a lot of grief there. And it's sort of a paradox because it's like, you go there to remember this version of heaven on earth. You go there and you get to see the magnificence and the majesty and the connection with the divine and the technologies that we still do not understand today. In 2025, we do not understand how these temples were built, how these pyramids were built, how these 100-ton pieces of rock and granite were moved thousands of miles across the desert. We do not have the technology to do that today. And so it implies that we were dealing with a different level of consciousness and different technologies. And something about remembering that in your body actually can create a sort of grief on the other side, because then we come back to this reality where we've forgotten. And so I'm dancing with this simultaneity of like extraordinary hope and inspiration and remembrance, and also a grieving for the fact that they were ever lost, like for the fact that we ever forgot, that we ever left the Garden of Eden, that we ever managed to leave planetary paradise. And simultaneously, more committed than ever to helping us collectively remember these ancient technologies so that we can birth a new earth. Because it's not a fairy tale. It's not a mystery. It's not even a hypothesis. We did it. We have proof. We have these living time capsules that are here. They're 3D, you can touch them, you can see them. And so it's not even like a theory, like Atlantis or Lemuria are theories. We don't have physical proof of those. But in Egypt, we have physical proof that humans were dealing with different states of consciousness and operating from a place of unity, harmony, and coherence that I think we can't even fathom of in our day and age. So I'm dancing this real paradox of outrageous hope and possibility and the grief that we lost it. And I think that's what the people are moving through as well, like what the retreat participants are moving through. Like it was such a big expansion. Like it was such a massive shift in consciousness for all of us. Like you go on these pilgrimages, not for a vacation, not to stay at the status quo, but to stretch yourself bigger and wider beyond the capacity that you had. And so you find your edges. I found my edge. Like I have never held more space. I have never danced with more darkness. I have never pulled more light through my nervous system than I did in these 10 days. And I'm not going to say it's expensive, but there's a cost to that, to like taking yourself to the edge and stretching yourself wider than you've ever stretched. It takes some time to reintegrate and to figure out, okay, well, I just broke open and I don't want to just put the pieces back together in the same way that they were. Because if why would I even go on the pilgrimage if that was the case? And so now it's a question of like, okay, I feel broken open, but I'm going to take this piece, and I'm going to pray for this one to come in. And it's like the kintsugi, the Japanese art form where the ceramics shatter and then they put it back together with gold and it becomes even more beautiful on the other side. So that's sort of the phase of the process I'm in right now, is like piecing myself back together, hopefully with gold.
When you say everyone is still in the medicine, what does that actually look like in real life?
Mm-hmm. You know, we have a tendency to chase ceremonies and chase peak experiences and chase highs, or even chase like what's the next trip or the next boyfriend or the next medicine. And there's power in doing ceremony. I mean, I am a ceremonialist. Like I love leading people through transformations, and really the work happens at the end of the ceremony. The work happens on the plane ride home from the pilgrimage. The work happens after you get off your meditation cushion of like, okay, how am I going to be with my son? How am I going to treat my mom? How am I going to be with this barista at the coffee shop? And so the ceremony really, even though we just got back from Egypt, the ceremony is starting now. Of, okay, we just had the extraordinary privilege of receiving these different codes and transmissions from these different temples. And now the question is, how am I going to allow that to change me or not? And it's like each temple was its own medicine ceremony. And the thing is, if you go to like the Hathor temple, which Hathor is the like archetype of love and femininity, and she's represented like the Milky Way, and she's sometimes represented as a cow of this like maternal, nurturing, feminine presence. So if you go and you receive these Hathor codes into your nervous system, anything that is not that gets highlighted for deletion. So we started the whole thing as an Isis pilgrimage, like giving thanks to Isis, the great mother, the mother of 10,000 names, the goddess of sex and magic and fertility. And so anything that is not that gets highlighted for deletion. The whole point of the trip was to bring the frequency of heaven to earth. And so guess what? Anything that is not vibrating at the frequency of heaven and earth is now getting highlighted for deletion. And that is sometimes not a gentle process. So it takes an extraordinary amount of resilience and preparation. And I think it's why it's so important that people have a daily meditation practice before they go on these pilgrimages, so that they have the ability to regulate their nervous systems and the ability to not only receive the codes, but to shed what is not in coherence with the new frequency, with that which they say they are trying to attain.
You've said you now have zero tolerance for apologizing for your power. What happened that flipped the switch for you?
So my first pilgrimage to Greece, when Layla and I did the priestess pilgrimage, part of that, we went to Eleusis, and it was very intentional, and it was inspired by Brian Marescu's book, The Immortality Key. And he had done over 10 years of research in the Vatican Library and the private papal library, basically proving both from historical documents and now through scientifically studying the chalices that they were serving medicine in at these ceremonies, that these European women were facilitating ceremonies and serving medicines, including ergot, which is the precursor to LSD, and mycelium wine. So basically like mushroom wine, and taking these world leaders into altered states of consciousness. And they would say that if you've not been to Eleusis, then you've never really lived. And you go to Eleusis to die before you die. And in doing that, in facing your own mortality and facing your own death, which happens in any good medicine ceremony, like the thing that you thought you were dissolves because you get access to that which cannot be named. You get access to God consciousness. You get access to creative intelligence itself. So there is a type of ego death that happens in any good ceremony. And I think that as you face that death, it allows you to really live. But for me personally, going to Greece, going on this pilgrimage, I was able to reclaim like what feels true about my ancestry and what feels true about what I've been doing for many, many lifetimes and many thousands of years. And after that, I just stopped apologizing for the codes that I carry, for the, I stopped hiding these powers, because right now we live in a society that's so patriarchal, that's so misogynistic, that's so allergic to magic, that is so shaming of pleasure, that it's really easy to try and like hide that or be in fear of that or be afraid that you're going to be persecuted in some way. And there's also such a blood memory in so many people from the millions of women that were burned at the stake. So going to Greece for me allowed me to see and feel viscerally that not only were these women not persecuted, not only were these women not burned at the stake, but there was whole fucking temples built for them. There was entire stadiums built around the magic and the world-changing medicine that was being served there for thousands of years. Plato, Aristotle, Euripides, people who birthed theater, democracy, and religion as we know it, their lives, their consciousness were changed through going through these ceremonies and being facilitated by these women. So there was a reclamation that happened for me where I stopped apologizing for doing this work because I could see that there is and was a reality where this was not only accepted, but heralded.
You also talked about women dimming their own light with backhanded compliments. Can you share what's been happening there for you?
There's another one there. I don't know if this happens to all women, but this happens to me a lot where a woman will give me a compliment and say like, wow, you look so beautiful, or you look so radiant. And then they'll make this underhanded insult. It's like a backhanded compliment. We're like, God, you look so beautiful. It's so annoying. Or like, oh, you look too good. Or like, why are you so dressed up? I didn't get dressed up. Or like, oh, you're not even sweating. That's so annoying. And I now have a zero tolerance policy on this, where it's like, if you want to give me a compliment, I will happily receive the compliment. What I'm no longer available for is you shaming or judging or comparing yourself to me in some way of like, oh, we need to dim, or we need to be equal, or we need to have the same outfit or the same amount of makeup or the same amount of shine or the same amount of radiance. And instead, what I invite us into is like, let's all be as beautiful and radiant and brilliant and strong and powerful as we desire to be. That we are all fractals of the divine, and that we need all of the sides of the disco ball that is God. And that if we just had 8 billion Emily Fletchers, that'd be a really boring reality. But that we need 8 billion unique expressions of the divine. And so it's really, and I am super judgmental. Like I am so judgmental. It's something I'm constantly checking myself on. So it's not like, I get it. I feel like it's just an external way that people are judging themselves, but putting it on me. And so I've just been inviting people up into, what if you just gave the compliment and then used it as a mirror, that if you, the only way you can see my beauty is because you can see your own beauty. So it's like, how can we continue to shine brighter and brighter and radiate each other's beauty? I don't know if I really nailed the like end of that. Like, what is it that I'm trying to say, actually? Yeah. Yeah. It's just an invitation that if someone gives you a compliment, what if you just receive it? Like, thank you. Thank you. And if you're going to give a compliment, what if you just give the compliment and recognize that if you can see beauty in someone else, that's because you actually can see beauty inside of yourself, because we are all just being mirrors for each other all of the time.
You always say that this work is planetary, not just personal. What larger purpose were you actually serving in Egypt?
So one of the big missions of this pilgrimage was to plant the prayers for these large-scale activations that we're going to start doing at the sacred sites and temples around the planet. And one of the visions I've been holding is Egypt. 13,000 people at the pyramids holding a vision for the species, using these antennas for what I believe they were meant for, using these like the pyramids are on the throat chakra of the planet. So basically what that means is just like a human body has energetic meridians, so does the planet. The planet has its own ley lines or energetic meridians, and they converge at different points. And the pyramids are on the throat chakra of the planet. And I also believe that they were built as antennas. Like the 3 pyramids line up exactly with Orion's belt, like exactly with the Sirius star system. So one of the goals of this pilgrimage was to go and do a small scale activation and hold our prayers for ourselves, to plant the prayers for this vision, and also bring in the prayers of the Ziva community. So we sent out an email to over 100,000 people. We got thousands of people to send in their prayer for the planet. We printed them out. We put them on the altar. I rented a private, and please note the emphasis on the air quotes of private space, where like we have a very private, exclusive rooftop overlooking the pyramids. So I have 60 people showing up all in white, ready to do a pleasure ceremony. And I get there and it's basically just a restaurant. There's tables, there's cigarette butts, there's trash cans, there's no DJ, there's no speakers. And there's no privacy, like actual zero. There's glass walls in all direction with people, families eating dinner on any side, kids playing in a hot tub 50 feet away. I was like, well, I guess we're not going to be doing a self-touch pleasure practice on our very private roof today. So we called an audible. We adapted the ceremony, and I was like, well, the Ziva magic formula is visualize, alchemize, magnetize. We can absolutely still visualize planetary paradise. We can absolutely still alchemize anything that's not a match, and we can absolutely still magnetize, but we're going to do it in a way that is respectful. We're going to do it in a way that is conscientious of the fact that we're in a Muslim country with families of all ages, people of all ages all around us. So we get there, everyone shows up, and it's awkward. Like, it's really, really awkward. And we're just naming it and sitting in it and dancing it and moving through it. And there's like whole families, just eyes wide, mouth agape. People are Instagram living it. 10-year-old kids are just like looking at us like, what are these crazy people doing? And what was wild is by the end of it, it felt like we had alchemized the whole field. Like, it felt like something shifted and we all got on the same team. Like, even the DJs at the other events somehow got into coherence with us. And by the end, we were like crying tears of joy, dancing, like, oh my gosh, we did it. And we amplified these prayers of thousands and thousands of people. And it felt like the field shifted, not from a place of like, F you, we're here, we're doing this, whether you like it or not. It was more like respect and reverence, and it created a field of unity. And that felt really special. And then at the end, there was a sweet man named Yusuf, and his family has been temple keepers. They've been pyramid keepers for over 700 years. And he came up to me and said, Emily, I feel like you reignited a piece of the pyramid's magic tonight. I feel like you did what these pyramids were designed to do. And then he said he felt like I was playing a role of Isis, and I felt very thrilled about that. But mostly it was that he felt like we had tapped into a portion of why these pyramids were built. And that felt like a really beautiful reclamation. And also that we did the job that we came there to do, that we did plant those prayers. And on the last night, I was asking his father, who literally grew up on the pyramids, like he would sleep on the rubble, on the stones at the base of the Great Pyramid as a child. So I can only imagine like how that frequency and intensity has affected his consciousness. But I told him my vision of like, hey, we want to do these large scale activations around the world. What do you think would happen if we bring these people in and do this ceremony? And he just looked at me and he said, trust yourself. Trust yourself. If you have this vision, your soul is pure, trust yourself. It's like, this is why these pyramids were built. At Ziva, we really like to help you be great in bed. And part of that actually means getting great sleep. I believe that sleep is a superpower. It's one of the things that is free, that helps you perform better during your day. And meditation is obviously the number one sleep hack that I have. But my number two sleep hack is actually magnesium. And upgraded magnesium is the only magnesium in the world that is proven in a clinical trial to absorb 99.9%. That combined with their 8-hour sleep helps your body not only go to sleep faster, but stay in a deeper state of rest longer. So the combo of the two, along with meditation, is going to make you feel like a superhero. So you can go to upgradedformulas.com/Emily and use the code Emily to get 20% off. This is the one supplement. If I had to go to the desert island and only take one supplement with me, it would be upgraded magnesium. So check it out, upgradedformulas.com/Emily, and use the code Emily for 20% off.
You've hinted that this trip changed your relationship with the masculine.
Yeah.
Which shifted for you in Egypt.
Yeah, it was wild. This particular trip to Egypt was so wildly different from every other time that I have been. I feel like I owe the men of Egypt a huge debt of gratitude because they helped me to affirm and establish that I have finally healed my effing daddy issues. Like, I have been working so hard. Like, how many more therapy sessions, how much more IFS, how much more ayahuasca can a lady do before you heal your daddy issues? And I feel really proud of the work that I've done over the last many years of shadow work and forgiveness ceremonies and journaling and parenting, reparenting little Emily. But the last time I went to Egypt, I was like disgusted. I was appalled. It felt like my nervous system was being accosted because it felt like someone was shitting on my temple. Like I have such deep devotion to ancient Egypt, and I have such a strong energetic connection with the magic that was happening there thousands of years ago, that to be in modern day Cairo, it feels like dirty and chaotic and misogynistic and smelly. And like everyone's trying to scam you all the time. And I was like very actually concerned for this pilgrimage. Like I wanted to protect our group from that energy. And this time I show up. The second I get off the plane, there's a man named Mohammed waiting for me with a visa in hand. I'm then FaceTiming with a love interest as I'm walking through customs. I then get in the parking lot and another man has met me in the parking lot, surprised me getting out of the car, who's a dear friend who I then rode an hour and a half into town with. I show up at the place. My friend Buja has gotten me flowers and dinner and a ring light to prepare for the Ziva Magic closing ceremony. I then am walking the next morning and a man on a moped like sees me, waves, lights up like I'm his best friend, and then sends me a chef's kiss through the air. We go to a coffee shop and the barista is like laughing at my jokes. And I ask him his favorite song and I sing him a song. And then I ask for the bill and he's like, it's on me. This man cannot afford to pay for my breakfast. And yet he did. And it was the sweetest thing. And then we get on the boat, which was a floating Mary Magdalene temple. And this man named Muhammad, again, I get on the boat, he starts crying and he's like, I feel like I built this boat for you. Like, thank you for blessing it. Thank you. I've been working so hard for 9 months. I put all of my money into it and it feels like this is the reason why I built it. And then this another man named Mustafa, who was like the head of the crew, my neck went out, my neck went into spasm. And he was like working on my neck, even though that's like very like against the customs, right? Like a Muslim man is not supposed to touch an unmarried woman. And it was not skeevy or weird. It was just like from this place of pure love and devotion. And it felt like when we would go to the temples, usually they're like always trying to like get tips and like kind of, it just feels like they're just hustling for money all the time. And this time it felt like they were like true temple guardians and they could see and feel the reverence and the frequency that we were bringing to these temples, and that they would like look in my eyes and see the sparks of divinity in my eyes. And these men were giving me blessings and hugs. And it just really re-imprinted my relationship with Egypt. And it felt like a beautiful affirmation of the healing work that I've been doing with the masculine. And if ever I was concerned or confused about whether or not we're living in a simulation, that the outpicturing of reality is a reflection of the internal work that you've done, this trip to Egypt just really proved that to me.
How did this Egypt pilgrimage change the way that you see the next chapter of Ziva, especially the levels and how meditation and magic fit together?
So as we were preparing for this pilgrimage to Egypt, I brought on 3 amazing world-class experts, Matthias DeStefano, Robert Edward Grant, and Isis Andrea. And Isis is an extraordinary scholar and student, and she was lecturing about the goddess Isis, the Egyptian goddess Isis, and her twin sister Nephthys. And I did not know that Isis had a twin sister, even though my house is basically like a whole temple to Isis now. Like I've never felt a stronger connection with the divine as I do through Isis. Like I've never anthropomorphized my relationship to God the way that I do with Isis. So then hearing that she has this twin sister who is the goddess of the unmanifest, the goddess of the dark, the goddess of the stillness, it shifted something inside of me because I realized that like, wait, it feels like Isis is the goddess of Ziva magic and Nephthys is the goddess of Ziva meditation. But these are twin sisters. These are 2 sides of the same coin. And so it was this tectonic shift where I realized that, wait, I'm not like teaching meditation for extraordinary performance over here. And then here's this weird pleasure manifesting thing over here. These are actually 2 sides of the same coin. I've actually only ever been teaching one thing my entire career. And that is, in order to manifest anything, you have to first go into the unmanifest. It's like grounded in being, perform action. Meditate first and then start your day. Flood your brain and body with dopamine and serotonin through meditation. And then from that state of consciousness, manifest magic. But one cannot happen without the other. And that actually, the more adept you are at de-exciting the nervous system, the more powerful tools you have to create coherence inside of your body and bring yourself down into the most subtle states of consciousness. That is the key that unlocks higher and higher realms of consciousness. That is the way that you actually access your highest timeline of reality. And I think that that is what we need to start doing, not only as individuals to manifest our personal desires, but this is what we need to be doing collectively. And it's also my theory on why we were able to create these extraordinary temples. It's why we were able to do feats that seem superhuman, that seems like, oh, well, this must have been done by aliens or this must have been magic, because we don't have the 3D materialistic technology to build these temples today in 2025. And I think it was actually that these temples are like time capsules, and they're proof that we as a species have accessed higher realms of consciousness. And so I think that the blueprint for building the new earth, the blueprint for creating heaven on earth is hiding in plain sight. And that it's up to us now to shift our state of consciousness collectively, because I very much operate under the belief that no problem can be solved at the same state of consciousness with which it was created. So if we keep pointing to politicians as the problem, that is not the answer. The politicians are an outpicturing of the stress that we are all having internally. The economy, everything that's changing, the stress that's happening, these are outpicturings of the internal hell that people are living right now. So if you want to shift reality, you first have to shift yourself. You want to birth heaven on earth, you have to create that frequency inside of your own body. And this is the part of the beauty of the teachings of the Egyptian legacy, of the Egyptian lineage, is the Hermetic principles, right? That as within, so without, as above, so below. And these are the teachings of Thoth that have been interpreted into Hermes, right? So this is a beautiful lineage and the connection point between Egypt and Greece. And Greece is actually going to be our next pilgrimage spot, which I'm very excited to weave this thread, because a lot of the most famous temples in Egypt were actually built by the Greeks. There's a really powerful flow that has happened throughout history from the way that the Egyptian magic has been interpreted and used by the Greeks. So I'm really excited that our next chapter is going to be Greece.
Zooming out from Egypt and Greece, what's coming next at
Without
Ziva
Egypt.
for people who want to be a part of this?
So it's not a secret that the world is changing, and very, very quickly. And I think that the rate of change is just going to continue to increase. And I think that right now we need a lot of community. And I also want to get these tools out to as many people as possible. Like a lot of, especially the meditation has been behind closed doors for so many thousands of years. You had to travel to the Himalayas, you had to apprentice, you had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get these initiations. And I feel like it's time for people to get the tools to regulate their nervous systems as a baseline. I also think it's time for us to start really, truly getting clear and intentional about what reality we want to create on the planet. And I think we're going to need to do that in community. I've also realized that I've only ever been teaching one thing, which is like how to move from the unmanifest to the manifest. So instead of having Ziva meditation and Ziva magic and having all these different offerings, we're moving it into one thing. There's just Ziva, where you're meditating to manifest. You're going into the unmanifest in order to manifest. And there's going to be Ziva level 1, level 2, and level 3. And level 1 is going to be our like world-changing, top of class flagship offerings where you're going to learn meditation and manifesting. And Ziva level 2, you're actually going to get access to our 2 flagship trainings, Ziva meditation and Ziva magic. But now you're also going to be joining a global community where you're going to get access to me and to my amazing community and colleagues, and access to the Ziva guides. And then Ziva level 3 is going to be a mastermind and pilgrimage where you actually get to do deep dive studies into the advanced Vedic practices, into mastering the cities. And each mastermind is going to be inspired by that pilgrimage. So we're going to choose 2 pilgrimage sites a year where we're going to do these large scale activations and document them. And then the whole mastermind is going to be designed around that. Like, what codes do you need to learn to prepare for that? What Vedic techniques are going to be most relevant to the theme of that temple? So I'm really excited to see what happens when we have different levels of community and that people get to learn both meditation and magic at every step of their journey.